We are live. We are live. Scooch this over just a little bit. I am in Wifey's office. If you guys got a glimpse of that pink chair. So I am in her office today. Just got baby girl down for a nap. So this is quite a bit of time coming to do this video. So I'm gonna let a few people hop on here in just a bit. But what I wanted to do is as we come up here, we're coming up on July of 2026 here in a couple of months. Man, it's crazy how much time has flown since we relocated short term here to North Carolina for for many reasons, but one in particular was stewardship of my family's land and property. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to share with you guys just the experience that I have had, and there's going to be people I'm sure who watch this video who are on all sides, right? There's probably going to be people here who are investors. There's going to be people here who are heirs themselves. There's going to be people here who watch this video at any point in life. I mean, it's public, right? Who are interested in just the life cycle of property in general, and maybe even think about their future generations. So, what I want to do is be authentic, be transparent with my story and my journey over the last 2 years, and share how I came about a deed. I won't put my public stuff over here, but how I came about a deed for part of my family's land here. So, let's get started. Um, so I grew up eastern North Carolina, deep in I would say deep in the country, about an hour outside of Raleigh, about an hour away from Fayetteville, North Carolina, Fort Bragg area, and grew up working on a farm, trailer house, like many folks I grew up with, dead end road in the country, right? Like had an amazing childhood and upbringing and a loving family for sure. And I think one of the things, hindsight being 2020, that I look back on is our initial homes that I grew up in were both on half acre lots, and on this road. And at that time, I had no idea that some of the trees that I walked past, going back and forth between grandma's house and what I inherited initially, which was my great grandparents' house, my cousins that lived across the street as well, like how all of this at one time, nearly 100 years ago now, was my family land, or as we call heirs property or heirs land, if you will. So I take it back to in Dallas, Texas, in my career, after growing up in North Carolina, doing different things, whatever the case may be, and ultimately moving to Dallas, Texas to marry my wife and start our family. Started having conversations with my dad as to, what's going to happen with my great grandmother's house. Family starting to get a little bit older, so making sure that they have things buttoned up. And at this point, I'd already purchased land abroad. So avid outdoorsman, marathoner, had already purchased some land abroad and invested there. And our now rental home, I had already purchased a new build construction home in Dallas, Texas. So I kind of already had my feet wet in this process of buying a home, buying land, escrow, stuff like that. So I started having this conversation with my dad, and he was like, "Yeah, like we got this property. You and your sister. There's been, a lot of things over the years that you don't know about per se, with behind the land and stuff like that. But I want this for y'all." And I was like, "Hey, well, while you in good health, you in your right mind, sound mind, let's go ahead and start getting some of this stuff buttoned up." Had a conversation. I think this is probably the first point for many people is I had a conversation with my sister. So even though I may not have had to, it was important to me that there was two different things. There was a trailer house and about a half acre lot, like I mentioned, 0.58, and then this other lot, which survey was kind of weird, but a little bit more about point, officially about point 0.6, but closer to 0.75 of where the marker is actually the stone actually is on the property. But anyway, had a conversation with my sister and was just like, "Hey man, got some capital coming in, want to move some stuff around, want to start getting title and stuff cleaned up. Would you mind if I take this particular property, which had an existing home on it that was built in 1934, um, that had quite a bit of damage. One, I still wish to this day that we would have been able to save it, but quite a bit of damage that had been done over the years to the property, and it was essentially a tear down at that point. And got clarity with my sister, got alignment, say, hey, I'm not doing anything down there or have any immediate plans as of right now. So yeah, go for it. So, made sure that sister was in a good place as we were kind of deciding who's going to get what and start the process with the actual attorney's office. So that's another key I think folks need to definitely lean into and know. You got so many tools today like Chat GPT and other stuff, that you can use to guide you and reference. But getting an attorney when you have property that you need to transfer the title into your name, in the state of North Carolina, and some of these things I'll share today, obviously, is going to be specific to where my property is. But when you have a scenario wherein you need to clean this stuff up, it's important to get an attorney involved early in the process. Praise God, me and my sister are on good terms, which is a blessing I don't take lightly. So we're able to kind of talk through some things in the beginning and get that clarity. But the next step for sure was getting an attorney to go through the process of um, getting the paperwork signed that I needed to sign and have both of my parents sign as well on their behalf and get notarized so they could legally assign, I guess that's a good word, assign the title over to me so that it can be in my name, which is a transfer of the ownership title, holding the ownership in myself. And that cost very little, man. It was like 200, it was $250, exactly how much it was. $250, whatever it costs, $25 or something, get that notarized. But that legally then moved the property over into my name. Now, this is where the story kind of like starts to pick up. So going through this process, obviously, this is 2024. I start learning about a lot, man. I start learning about how to go to the county tax records, looking up on websites, going through the deed book, looking up pages. So I started going back through this process, man, that led me far back, all the way to 1919, where ultimately I discovered multiple marriages that had taken place and had kind of separated this property. In the beginning, it was actually 49 and a half acres, or 49.5 acres, 50 acres, if you will, that was owned by my fourth ex great grandfather by marriage. And he had bought it from several family members. Last name, I'll leave that out because that's family stuff, but had bought it from several family members for $306 in the early 1900s, which if you think about it, it's kind of amazing in and of itself. We're talking about rural Eastern North Carolina sharecropping. The oldest document that I saw in the deed like of records was 1919. We're talking about not that many years removed from slavery, in the southeast. So that in and of itself is a feat, and to be able to purchase it, where oftentimes you'll see this too, where land will trade from family member to family member, sometimes for free. Like there's some type of transaction, like in this case, my parents didn't charge me anything. They didn't sell me the property. They essentially gave it to me, but there might be the $250 for the attorney or some fees or something. But my great grandfather had actually purchased this property for $306. And as I'm reading through the story, man, the different families and the names, and I'm realizing how at scale, in this predominantly small area, this was a predominantly black area. Not just black, but Native American as well, which is a whole nother part of the story that I'll share of discovery later on. But this was, I think there's this popular thing that people talk about Black Wall Street, and when they talk about Tulsa, Oklahoma, and we kind of focus on that in the Southwest. But it was not, I would say these communities in the Jim Crow era were not limited to just one particular area of the United States. These were all over. And in this case, this was a working class farming, row crop, corn, sweet potatoes, great grandfather he had horses, which to this day I actually have in the barn one of the harnesses for a horse that I found back on the property, like in the dirt, like just covered up over the years. But I actually saw it; it was visible. So this was a working community of different families that had come together. So, as this discovery kind of goes along, I'm unpacking these things. I'm learning about the timber lease that my great grandfather had, which led me ultimately into starting a private equity firm in the land and timber space. It's just so much. If I just take a step back, it was just so much of a self self realization, if you will. Like if you imagine this mirror that's behind me right now, when you're looking at deeds and you're looking at history and you're looking at the story of your family and land, um, it is so inspiring, as well as it is so humbling as well, when you start to see how the stewardship of property and things have taken place and families having disputes or whatever over the years. And unfortunately, that in that case, it was the same case for our family. So um, come to the 80s, right? So multiple changes throughout family, people pass away, things happen, whatever the case may be. We actually lost part of our property to taxes in the late 80s. So we actually lost 17.9 of those acres in a tax foreclosure on part of the property. Um, Now, to my assumption, I don't know at what point it got traded through um, the records. At what point was it parceled up or was it separated? I think I remember seeing something like in the 50s that started after a marriage or somebody passed away, started getting broken up. That great grandfather had died in 1927. He passed away. We actually have a tombstone that I will share you guys. I'll share you guys an actual photo of, maybe share you guys a photo of. And the reason why I say maybe is like there's so much that's like it's so much that is so personal. I think oftentimes when it comes to heirs land and heirs property, that even in myself, right, like going through all the steps, going through the legal work or whatever, cleaning it up, I think many times in the rural south of land ownership and stewardship, there's so many sore spots, um, from families that have bickered, have had disagreements and challenges that they didn't get over for years, bro. Like for years. I'm just keep it all the way a buck, as we say. That it still is one of those things. Like I think for me, I wanted to just protect immediately. I wanted to get things cleaned up. I wanted to protect family legacies, family stories for the next generation and the generation along further along with that, right? Because at the end of the day, like I think one of the first things that I saw for me was that, great grandfather, he had a vision. You know what I'm saying? He had timber lease. He was planting pines, man. Like pines take, time to grow and harvest and replant. Like he was already in many ways in my mind thinking like he was already a trailblazer in so many ways, especially for that time, and thinking about later down the line in history. And there was a great part of me that wants to there is a part of me that wants to expand and grow that territory, for future generations. So where do we go from there? So yeah, so tax foreclosures, in the rural South, man, stuff gets messy, bro. Like, there's a lot on literacy, financial literacy, understanding, proper notification. Something that I still see to this day. I have a buddy who has built a substantial amount of wealth working with tax liens, foreclosed properties, and heirs properties. So I've been able to like learn and glean from him on both sides of people who invest in these things, into properties that have liens and foreclosures, as well as the opposite side as well to backpack on it or to walk to it backwards, if you will, of how to avoid, your property going into tax foreclosure or getting these tough situations when it comes to liens. And again, as I mentioned, we had lost 17.9 of those acres of the property to an actual neighbor, to an actual neighbor, um, of my family at that time. So there's a lot to unpack there as well. But this is the story of rural Black South and land ownership in so many ways. And I think one of the first things that I immediately saw, and I had a conversation with my father and about history and when things had happened, and other family members needing to be involved. I think I would come back to say that financial literacy and programs like you see the National Association of Black Farmers and that huge suit that they had won a couple of years back. I think it was like $1 billion or something like that. And I actually know farmers, African American farmers who were a part of that, that were able to benefit from programs like Equip, but also benefit from monies that were supposed to be set aside for Black farmers that they did not get. One of my mentors out of Georgia has he actually just exited that property. It was a 140-acre farm that he had in middle Georgia. Was a benefactor of that. So I think historically looking back at it, going through the Depression era, Jim Crow era, Civil Rights movement, so many different things, and all the way up to where some of those original generations of people who were either the buyers or original purchasers who acquired that land, and the two or three generations down who essentially lost the land. It gets complex. So I perfectly, in today this video, I hope that for anybody that's listening to this who is hearing me tell my story and my truth and my journey, that in the pain you may or may not be able to relate, but in the purpose and the promise of what's possible in the future, you are able to grasp my heart, my reasoning for the video, and that it's never too late. If you have family members, I think since I started telling my story, my first video that me and my wife did, it got like 12,000 views on Facebook. And we just went down there. This was shortly after I inherited the property, finally got down there with the wife. Did we have baby girl with us? I think we had baby girl with us. Did we have baby girl with us? I don't think no, we didn't have her that time. But went down there, took some pictures of the property. It's still full of muscadine vines growing everywhere that my great grandmother had. She had hydrangeas. I mean, gosh, she had crepe myrtle trees that had grown. I mean, they were over the top of the house, like huge crepe myrtle trees that were out there. And just every time you're there, it just automatically you're forced to slow down. One, because it's so daggone hot. It's country. But two, and most importantly, there is something to, you have these conversations and we thought y'all just like we cousins or something like, we have these conversations about, Africa and history and, where we're from. And I've done ancestry.com. I can do a video about that and talk about my self-discovery and connection to the Lumbee tribe, as well as Cameroon and Nigeria as well. We can talk about all of that if you want to. But I think there's something to be said about centuries, yeah, not decades, centuries of history on land and in a particular area that you do feel at home. And I'd say I feel at home whenever I am home and where I grew up here in the good old state of North Carolina in America. When I'm down there on that land, I just been many a times I went down there hunting and outdoors and just sitting on the property with the parcel that I was able to get the title clean up that I own. Um, just sitting there and just thinking about the stories and the stuff that I've been told in the history. And guys, I'm only 30 years old. Like we're talking about, you know, literally coming up on 2030 here in 4 years. We're talking about this particular house was built on this property in 1934. So we're almost talking about 100 years worth of history. So in so many words, so yeah, we're down there, we're enjoying the property, we're kind of telling our story, and it's just like, um, I knew that this is where the story kind of gets deeper. So, long story short, I have over 100 ancestors that are expected to be buried on the part of this property that is now landlocked that we lost to taxes in the late 80s. I told you I was gonna get deep. So there's different laws. So I had to go through the process of getting the state involved. There's different nonprofit organizations that can help you to make sure that an area is not desecrated. you can get it, I won't say licensed, but pretty much registered with the state of the area, the geographic area of the property. Um, I think what ends up happening is that it comes up on a GIS map, if I'm not mistaken. There's a filter, there's a geospatial, whatever they call it, geospatial GIS map for every county, and you can look at a particular parcel, and they'll have an overlay which you can click like a layer, and it'll have a location of where something is, which lets you know like that's big trouble. Like if you disrupt any developers or real estate people who watch this, like you not want to mess with cemeteries. Like that's you do not want to mess with that. So so yeah, I was able to, respect my family members, and that's where I actually was able to walk back there and get permission from one of the descendants of that neighbor, get permission to go back there, which is, ultimately respectful. And these things, man, that's at the end of the day, history is history. But if you want to have a future looking forward that is hopeful and bright, what you want to do is, I'm a believer in Christ, and that's how I live my life. Is that you want to, you know, take the best foot forward, and ultimately you will get far better by having your words seasoned with salt, as we say, and with grace and with love and with respect. And if you give that respect, it's often going to come back to you. So was able to get access, say, hey, I'm gonna come check it out. I'm getting some people to come down from Raleigh to, look at the area and examine it. And I've actually seen this too. This is what the lady from the preservation, I think is North Carolina Cemetery Preservation Organization, something like that, in the title. And she'd actually said, like, historically, black folks could not be buried in the same cemeteries. So it's like you had white folk cemeteries, you had black folk cemeteries, you had other folk cemeteries. Well, in this particular community, as I mentioned before, this is a thriving community at one time that was very large. So not only is my great, great, great grandmother buried there, no marker, this great grandfather actually had a tombstone that is still there. There's several markers, these little metal markers all over. And actually, I think this will add to the video so guys can kind of see and understand what I'm talking about. So let me pull it up. There's these little metal markers that are there that are all over the area back there. So they look like this. They look like this. So they're like little metal enclosed little things with like some paper in there when the person died and whatnot. And here's the actual like gravestone of my great grandfather, 1855, 1927. So yeah, man, this stuff is so heavy to talk about. So anyway, was able to get back there and pay my respects. That was something I definitely did. Just stood there for a second and just said, you know, shoot, thank you. Like I don't know, like in those scenarios, like I feel like it's one of those things, and some people might be like, oh, that's you're starting to get a little weird or whatever. I don't know. All I have to do is tell you that when you inherit something and you believe that somebody was thinking about you, before you were ever thought of, somebody was thinking down the line about you as a man, and having a spouse, having a child, and thinking about their future and my grandchildren, by the grace of God's children and children. It's one of those things where you got to pay your respects, man. And just, none of that stuff, the riff-raff that you hear about in families or challenges, none of that stuff matters in those moments. It's just one of those humbling moments where you just like, man, okay, what am I gonna do? Like, how am I gonna move the narrative forward, if you will, to push this thing forward? And that was certainly the case for me. So, in so many words, was grateful to have that opportunity to speak with that landowner now who owns that property that the cemetery backs up to, and just go from there. Now, is all of the property title stuff cleaned up? No, not at all. Part of the 50 acres is still in the heirs property scenario where it has not been changed over to title, and it's a whole nother side of other family members, and I've had some conversations and stuff there, and would love to see something ultimately become of it, so that particular parcel does but up to where it's expected that these hundred some people are buried. And the reason why, let me give you why, um, what where that number comes from. So because of how burials took place at this particular time, and also storytelling evidence from that now landowner who, she is in her like, might be in her 90s, was talking about how she remembered folks coming back when she was little being buried back there, and how the land. So I had this expert dude come out from Raleigh, and they have like all these tools and stuff, and they're able to come back and examine areas. And my own father, who actually remember being back there when he was young, remember there being like all of these, I won't say tombstones, but just markers that over the decades that they're falling down or being, this is this is timber pine country, y'all. This bears back there, everything. So like stuff just being compounded by dirt and years. Just think about like fossils, for example, or something. Like literally, stuff just gets covered up over the years and being unkept back up here in these trees. Way back, we talking about, it's not a mile back, but it's, if you look at 17.9 miles, imagine 17.9 acres, and imagine that as a straight rectangle back into the woods. Like that's how this is. And there's creek down there. So yeah, that's so after they came out and did their testing and stuff, they were like, yeah, we can't even get in how we need to without having a full scale team. And it's gonna be X amount, excuse me, X amount of dollars to you for us to be able to do this. A substantial amount at the time where I was like, okay, I've already, spent this money on the property, getting the house torn down, which we had to tear down, which in full transparency was a challenge in and of itself, but cost about I mean, it cost $8,000. What it was, 8,000, like $400 to get that torn down, and trying to find highest and best use and making the right stewardship calls for the property was one of those. Was like, okay, I got to back up a little bit and just kind of recalibrate this whole process of what's needed. See, if there's some grants out there, and sometimes there are different programs out there that you can explore. um and some of those people that were buried there were formerly enslaved, so that's still something that is open to me, that I am willing to look into and gain support of. I think in the midst of other things that have taken place in life too, this has definitely been a process that takes time. It's not something you can just jump in, and just like conversations with other members of family, and just trying to piece together the history, um and build allies for anybody who is an heir, man. Like you know this to be true. Like, or if you don't, hey, I'm here to share with you, you need allies in your family who have shared vision, common goal. You need to find out who that steward of the family's history is. You'll oftentimes find, straight up, like I talk to heirs all the time, and we have such similar story. It's like every family member who doesn't have ties to the land, whether they're absentee owners or they're heir but they live somewhere else, like they're always quick to sell it. Like, sell it, let's get some money, let's get out of it, whatever. They don't have any ties to it. And then you typically have family members who either did grow up there, maybe still live in the South or still live nearby the property, that have a little more of an emotional attachment to it, which is great. Like, you need both. You need people who are capitalists, if you will, who think about like highest and best use of the property, whatever the case may be, as well as you need stewards who say, "Hey, whoa, 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 let's not just be have concerns about keeping it. Let's have concerns about preserving it, improving it, making it better, if possible, for the next generation. And what does highest and best use look like?" So definitely finding allies in this is going to serve you well for anybody who's watching this, who's in this circumstance of inheriting a property or trying to understand what to do with it. So I want to keep this one kind of short. I know we're coming up on 30 minutes, but I think for this particular chapter that I want to finish up on is, since then, we have I've considered different options of getting an easement. I'm sure some people leave a comment like, why don't you get an easement to the cemetery? So I have explored that and presented that to the landowner, who is in so many words, not willing to provide an easement to the property. Totally fine with us coming back there, but is not willing to provide a legal deed to easement. For anybody that doesn't know what an easement is, a legal deeded easement is in the deed, it's an access of ingress and egress to your property. So it essentially makes sure that your property is not landlocked, that you don't have any legal access. Now in North Carolina, there's different provisions and policies in place to make sure that families are able to go access a property upon permission at a predestined, like, or not predestined, but pre-approved like time. Hey, call that current landowner. Hey, we're coming by, drop some flowers off. In this case, like I was starting this process of gonna have somebody coming out to clean it up and kind of get things better marked or whatever the case may be of the area. But that easement provides, and essentially what I was looking for, and what I would like to see done is that easement provides a peace of mind that that shared goodwill, if you will be documented legally for years and years and generations to come. That goodwill is kind of shared there as well. Because at the end of the day, if your property, if your cemetery in this case is landlocked, you don't have legal access. Like the only way of going to get to this particular thing is to go through like acres on acres of deep thicket woods. Like it's not even something like that I hunt. It's like we're talking about deep thicket, no trail or anything like that to get back there too. So it could otherwise be forgotten about. And for the most part, since the 80s, that cemetery was forgotten about. I'll leave that alone. But I didn't forget. I picked it up. I got the title, got the deed, and started digging up through history. So I will leave you guys with this video. That, man, I hope this is as much of a truth telling video as well as it is a inspiration to anybody who is out there who cares, who cares about history, who cares about their family's legacy and lineage, to keep pounding, keep searching for answers, utilize tools and technology and resources that are free. It didn't cost me anything to get that property registered with the state, to get the cemetery registered with the state. The only thing in the process that cost me anything initially was the tear down of the old home, obviously. Find a contractor to do that, making sure had that all buttoned up. And but the actual deed transfer, like I said, I hired an attorney, $250. Getting things cleaned up is legally, and the heirs stuff is low cost. It's not that hard. The hard part is getting everybody on one accord. Anybody, you could talk to anyone. Like you could talk to investors who buy properties, who kind of swoop in sometimes, and you know for some who, for better or for worse, hey man, sometimes if an exit strategy is best for a piece of property, then that could possibly be the best exit strategy. But education, I think it is important when everybody's on one accord of what the true best, highest and best use of exit strategy for that property is. But getting everybody on one accord, that's a challenge. So I hope this video blessed you guys. I hope this video was good. I hope this video was explanatory in my own personal journey with heirs property and how navigating it can be, for a brighter side. And hopefully, I pray that the next time I do a video in particular about the property down there, um, that it is, as it sits today, I hunt the property is cleaned up, got a nice barn cleaned up, cleaned everything up, got the yard cleaned up, got some beautiful deer. I just saw some on the camera. I'm about to show y'all, tell you how country I am. Got some beautiful deer out there on the property. Those muscadines are growing. They'll be ready here. Shoot, first one's probably be ready in about May if the deer don't eat them all up. So it's still a place, to go down there and protect. I got a camera on the property. Definitely something I should go into a little bit more, maybe on a future video about, just put a trail cam. You can use Tacticam. That's what I use. No affiliation other than just a great product. Put a camera out there. You want to make sure you're watching out for squatters when you got rural property like that, and keeping up with your taxes, and obviously explore trust. That helps with adding some legal barriers or buffers there. Things like that you can definitely do. But I think just more importantly, man, we have to start seeing our family's legacy and properties in such a way that it's part of our story. Just like you keep up with your birth certificate or you keep up with, I don't know, your driver's license. Like think about your land the same way. Think about something that's necessary for you to have and to protect for a reason. It's part of your identity. Like just like that license is a part of your identity, your land in so many words is a part of your identity. And that is more than enough reason to protect it, to steward it well, to make it as beautiful and as branded for who you are and who your family is as well, to protect for generations to come. So I'll let that be it for this one. If anybody has questions, comment below. You can reach out to, you can schedule a call. I got several scheduling links acuity. You can reach out on www.booncapital.co, booncapital.co, and throw 15 minutes on my 15 minutes on my calendar. We can definitely talk. Um, or you can reach out via email. Personal email is Colby, Colby, Cornell, Cornell, the number one at gmail.com. Colby Cornell one at gmail.com. It's definitely something I'm going to be discussing more. I see this as stewardship. I see this as purpose and promise. You know, that God's given me this blessing and ability to be able to talk with folks and help to break down things that are difficult when it comes to land and stewardship in a great way, that is digestible for folks to understand. So, yeah, hope this bless y'all. God bless.